Are you ready for the hot seat?
Welcome to In the Hot Seat with the Tenney Group. I'm Spencer Tenney. It's good to be with you. What in the world is going on in freight tech M&A? Well, my next guest is coming off hot of a brand new acquisition, has a few thoughts to share with us. Please welcome Sean Dehan, VP Corporate Strategy and M&A over there at Truckstop. Sean, welcome to the hot seat.
Spencer, I appreciate it. I'm already feeling it. It's already quite warm.
Well, we're going to heat it up here in just a minute, but before we do, Sean, why don't you just take 30 seconds and tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing there at Truckstop and a little bit about the company that you work there.
Yeah, sure. So Truckstop.com is a 30-year-old, turning 31-year-old freight technology business. Truckstop started, when Truckstop was first started, it was named the Internet Truckstop. Back then, .com wasn't quite a thing. This was 1995. Realized .com was probably a better approach. So eventually transferred to the Truckstop.com moniker. And Truckstop started as the first internet load board on the internet, and has evolved over time as a business does over 30 years and into a market leader and one of the largest freight networks in all of trucking. What I mean by freight network is on one side you have the demand, and the other side you have the supply, and we connect the demand and the supply in many ways across our load board product, across our financial services products, and across our compliance products. So over time, through acquisitions, through product development, Truckstop has become a much bigger version of itself, and a company that really is a bellwether for freight tech, and a bellwether for, in a lot of cases, for the market as well.
Well, no argument there. Let's jump right in. So we were joking a little bit. I just ran into your CEO, Scott, at TIA when I was doing a little presentation on $100 million offers. And the way that he introduced you guys, he says, we're the eHarmony of freight and brokers.
Yeah.
So tell us about that. What would you add or subtract from the way that he kind of explained you guys?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the difference between, so I think everyone gets the concept, right? It's a matching service. On one side, you've got, a person looking for love. On the other side, you got a person looking for love. This sits in the middle, and they find each other in some way, shape, or form. Perhaps they find each other because the algorithm suggests that they find each other. Perhaps they find each other because they search for, dog, lover, and gluten-free, and they find, some subset of dog, lover, and gluten-free. And in a lot of ways, our core network product, the load board, does just that, right? You're able to, as a shipper or a broker, search for carriers with very, very specific requirements, and find lists of those. You're able to post yourself, post your freight out there, and offer it for carriers to take it. Similarly, carriers can post themselves, right? And hey, I'm in Birmingham. I'm trying to move up to Nashville, where you guys are based, and I run a reefer. Any loads out of here, give me a call. And that gives the ability to kind of create that connection. I think the difference between eHarmony and Truckstop ultimately, right, where we go a little bit further, is that obviously this is a business versus a romantic relationship. eHarmony ultimately will find itself out of a customer. They'll get married or engaged or might move into some monogamous relationship probably at some point in time, and that does happen in our world too. It's less frequent, right? Not all of our customers end up finding a long-term solution, and most of our customers want to be independent. They don't want to work for a single company. They want to have a diversified book of business to protect themselves against the ups and downs of a single customer, to protect themselves against the whims of a employer. And so most of our customers do want to stick around in the spot market, or maybe add some contract and dedicated stuff to their spot book. So we tend to have customers for longer than the eHarmony does. And on the brokerage side too, right? Brokers being the demand side in our marketplace, they're not looking to move one load one time and then move on, right? They're looking for building out a business, right? And they want to find capacity for that business all the time. So brokers are always kind of looking for capacity, and so they're posting to the board to build out capacity, some of which they'll access without going through Truckstop in the future, right? They'll build a relationship and then they don't need Truckstop to find that capacity. But I can assure you, the way our industry works, as you know well, having been in this space for a long time, that capacity is always changing over, and capacity is moving hands and moving from one market to another, shutting down, opening up. And so there's always opportunity to find and explore new capacity, particularly as the market is the way it is today.
Very, very good, and appreciate that. So let me back up a little bit. I think you've got we were joking a little bit. Both fellow Longhorns coming out of Austin,
Right.
a few moons ago. You had an interesting career path here. So I want to unpack what you've been doing over the last 4 or 5 years
Yeah.
at Truckstop.com. But tell us about some of the highlights. What were some of the most informative career spots or moments that kind of got you to the work that you're doing today?
Yeah. I studied philosophy at the University of Texas, and there's really only like 3 people that study philosophy at any school. It's the people that know they're going to be in academia because all they want to do is sit around and think. There's the lawyers. They're certain they're going to become lawyers, and they think philosophy is a good path for it. And then there's like the trust fund kids. Unfortunately, I'm none of those 3. And for whatever reason, that was still the path I chose. It's a longer story, actually. There's a pretty good reason, but that's a longer story. And that actually led me into this kind of liberal arts degree that, and this way of thinking and this, kind of approach to breaking down problems that was almost engineering, almost an engineering approach in a lot of ways, but more my world was words, not bits and atoms. It was words and thoughts and the things of that nature. In philosophy, I was able to use that to go into a really unique firm that effectively did management consulting, but we did it on a subscription basis. It was kind of a membership program to kind of get management research and management consulting services. And they really liked liberal arts kids. They liked to hire liberal arts kids, one, because they were cheap, because they didn't command the same amount of money that an engineering kid did or a business school kid did. And 2, they didn't have any bad habits or preconceived notions of what business was or how to do business. And I got really early on, I got to speak to some very, very influential people. I mean, I can tell you right now, I got put into the finance practice, and right out of the gates, I knew I did not want to be in the accounting side of that finance practice. I knew I did not want to be on the tax side of that practice. And so I figured out a way to get into the M&A and strategy side, because the secret is that all CFOs want to run M&A and strategy. So we played to that, and we sold a service that was basically advisory for their FP&A function and for the CFO on M&A and strategy. And I was a 22-year-old kid, philosophy degree out of UT, and this was before LinkedIn was a huge thing. So most of my clients didn't look me up, right? That they were successful CFOs in their 40s and 50s, and maybe even sometimes 60s. They weren't looking me up on LinkedIn, so that was very fortunate. I have a deep voice, and there was almost no video conferencing. We didn't do Zooms at the time. It was all phone calls and conference bridges. And so the deep voice could make it seem like I had much more experience than I did. And so I got to spend a lot of time talking to CFOs and heads of FP&A that were in middle market companies, just like Truckstop, honestly. Typically our customer was between $100 million and $1 billion in revenue. And I talked to customers like Crocs was a customer of ours, and they would be out of my market now. But back then, the question around Crocs was, is it a fad? Is it a trend? It's turned out to not be a fad, and it's just a persistent trend. But so I spent a lot of time with CFOs talking about M&A and strategy. At that point in time, I said, I wanted to go do this work. Fortunately, my firm was large enough, and we had an M&A team and a strategy team, and I was able to parlay that experience with those CFOs and advisory work into that. And then from there, it's basically been mostly focused on M&A and strategy. I did some consulting after I moved into that role. I did some investing as well, kind of ran a small little PE shop. And then I've been in strategy and consulting. And then I had an opportunity to move in from strategy, where I spent a couple years advising private equity firms in the middle market on software and technology companies and acquisitions and their value creation plans. Had an opportunity to join Truckstop. And it was kind of the right place, right time. I was really looking to sink my teeth back into a single project and go really, really deep in something. I knew nothing about transportation, which, I wish I did know something about transportation. If I did, I probably, maybe I don't join Truckstop. Transportation is a fun industry, but it's got a lot of challenges to it. I probably would have known, not having a lot of knowledge probably helped me make the right decision, which was taking the Truckstop job. And since then, I've been in this role for about 4 years almost now. And my focus has been on how do we build out the Truckstop platform? How do we build out the Truckstop network through product, go-to-market, and M&A, as well as partnerships, right? And so I've got a fun and large purview over Truckstop, which gives me a really fun and large purview of the market, and I get to meet a lot of really exciting and interesting people and see a lot of exciting trends that have happened in the 4 years that I've been here. It's been pretty interesting to see that as well. So it's been a lot of fun, and now we're really looking forward to kind of the next leg for Truckstop, the next run for Truckstop, which is under our founder and CEO Scott Mosgrip, who has come back to help us really innovate and really drive a lot of what's needed in the market today, especially in this age of AI that is got a lot of our customers really trying to figure things out.
Yeah, to that end, I think there's a lot of folks. I mean, you go around. I say this a lot. It seems that there's an infinite amount of new technology, and people are just trying to figure out like what to do with it. And so you mentioned trends. I'm curious, what are some of the trends that you're seeing in the market right now, and why is that important to both brokers and then those folks on the truckload side?
Yeah, well, I mean, we can start from a market perspective. I typically look at trends in my world and in two ways. I think of like the economic market and both the macro and the micro. The macro being just the general economy, the micro being the trucking economy, and then I look at things like the trends in freight technology and how those are helping our customers execute better or deliver more value to their owners. On the economy side, I can tell you that a lot of what's happening in the macro is really impacting the micro of trucking. Obviously, there's wars that are happening that's impacting the fuel stuff. And I was talking with a customer last week. He was like, "Man, I just can't get a break." It's like on one moment we see rates moving up, and then fuel just spikes like crazy, and rates don't obviously jump as fast as fuel does. Fuel can change one day to the next in terms of pricing. The trucking market tends to lag that in terms of pricing of the commodity of shipping freight. And so they've been squeezed in that way. They were just seeing some daylight. Now they're getting squeezed there. At the same time, we're seeing from a macro, almost political perspective or governmental perspective, we're seeing some real leadership in the FMCSA. We're seeing real leadership at the DOT and Secretary Duffy and Administrator Bars at the FMCSA. And that's actually, coming from the top of President Trump, that's actually driving microeconomic impacts in the trucking market, right? Non-domiciled CDLs getting cracked down, ELP language stuff having cracked down impact, and we're seeing those trends. And so what that's ultimately resulting in a lot of things is we're seeing massive year-over-year jumps in spot market volumes in the 30 to 40% year-over-year. We're seeing rates move not dissimilarly, maybe not 30 to 40%, but in the 10 to 20% range year over year. Some of that is fuel driven, right? So what would that be? X fuel. You have to kind of work through that type of math. And so the trends we're seeing right now are very positive from a microeconomic perspective, right? As fuel comes under control, we'll probably see some better outcomes for our trucking customers. And then on the free tech side, I think that the unavoidable trend is AI, right? And what particularly agentic AI and some of the primitive tooling of AI allows for our customers to achieve. So.
Oh, that's good stuff. I read in a recent report, I think we're at 17 straight weeks in terms of flatbed spot rates increasing. But along with that, I mean, we're still not, there's kind of haven't reached an equilibrium or back where we once were a few years ago, just because of the cost of increased operations. And so what do you see moving forward on just the general freight market? Any predictions you can share with our audience?
Man, I try to avoid predictions. I would study philosophy, remember, not economics. And so I try to avoid predictions. But what I can say, and things that we feel really confident in, are that, we are in a structural, and probably partially cyclical, change in the flatbed market. The level of investment that we have in energy right now, at in the U.S. is unprecedented. Really, I think the only other build outs that kind of are compared are like the railroad build outs and things of that nature. But the investment in data centers and nuclear plants and just general energy, all to support this massive, promise around AI, really has impacted the flatbed market. Like, we can definitively see that. That's not a coincidence, right? It's the home market hasn't changed a ton. Housing starts haven't changed a ton. And so it's very, very clear that this data center build out and the infrastructure around that is driving this flatbed stuff. Did that come to an end? Does the music stop at some point in time? I think it's going to take time for the music to stop, right? Because these are long-term build outs. These are big projects. Elon Musk just announced he's going to spend $120 billion to build out the Terafab here in Austin, Texas. That's a massive amount of freight that's going to have to move in order to build that out. And it's going to be mostly open deck freight that helps build that out. So we think open deck, we're very long-term bullish on open deck and where that goes for the US. And like Warren Buffett, Truckstop believes that, the American promise and the American dream is real. And if you bet on America, you're generally speaking going to win. So we're going to continue to invest in our business here. I can't really speak to like what's going to happen in van and in reefer. Those are so commoditized, and a lot of that has to do with demand. What I can say is it should continue to get a little bit better. We expect we'll see less capacity, continually. We're about to see, DOT week here in the next couple of weeks. And it'll be really interesting to see what that does to what kind of spikes that creates in the market. There's obviously seasonal demands here with some produce and the summer months and things of that nature that could impact van and reefer as well. I think the jury's still out whether or not this is something that we're at kind of a new floor. The way I like to think about it, though, is I think we're rebaselining, right? I was at a conference recently, and they were talking about a super cycle. Is this the start of a super cycle? And I said, well, we should probably define what a super cycle is. And I don't know, Spencer, if you've looked up the definition of super cycle, but a super cycle is something that lasts for 15 to 25 years. And I can definitively say that whatever we're doing right now will not last for 15 to 25 years. So no, we are not in a super cycle, but it does feel like we are starting to create a new baseline. To your point,
yeah,
trucking operation just can't sustain the rates that we were at before. Costs have increased far too much. So it does feel like we're finally correcting. We're finally setting that new baseline of the kind of threshold profitability. And from here, we should hopefully see continued growth in the rate market.
Yeah, I heard another industry friend describe it as like we're closer to kind of reestablishing the industry floor from a freight market standpoint, but like TBD on where the ceiling is
on that,
based on
I think
all of the things. And so it'll be really interesting to watch. We'll certainly keep our eye on you guys to help make some informed assessments on that. I teased the latest transaction from you guys that you closed last week on the front end, which congrats, number one.
Thank you very much.
So you guys acquired heavy haul rate platform Wize Load. So let's just back up, like walk us through how did the deal get done? What was the significance of it, and why are you excited about it?
Yeah, this is a really fun deal for us in so many ways, right? Like to your point, how it got done, how it came about. This is the type of deal that you don't get to do if you're new in the market. You don't get to do if you haven't, put your blood, sweat, and tears in this market. This is one of those ones where I got to lean on Truckstop's 30 years of experience. The founder of Wize Load is a man named Matt Ziegler, and Matt Ziegler runs a well-known brokerage called ZMAC with his brother Ray. And about 10 years ago, he approached us and said, "Hey, we really think there's a big opportunity in the oversized, overdimensional market, and to provide, canonical quoting and pricing view on moves in that market." And we think it's a big opportunity, and that this was him coming to us, and Matt's been on Truckstop's customer advisory board for 10, 15 years. So Matt goes way back with Truckstop, and we said, it's not on our roadmap right now. This was maybe, call it 7 to 10 years ago. Not on our roadmap right now. Not something we're gonna invest in. We've got other fish to fry. And he said, "Well, can I use some of your data can we partner on the data side and to help build out this product? We said, yeah, it's totally fine. Like we'll partner and we'll do some stuff there on that. And so Matt's been building this product out. It took him about 5 years to really commit to it. And so he started building this out in 2020, 2021, and leveraging the Truckstop data like we had talked about. And he's built out a nice business. And at the same time, our roadmap and strategic path started to come a little closer to where Matt was in the oversized over-dimensional space. Scott, our founder, came back, and he has a vision for Truckstop that is one size doesn't fit all. In a lot of ways, eHarmony is a one size fits all platform. eHarmony is Spencer, you could get on there, I could get on there, we may not be nothing alike. And a bunch of women get on there, they may be nothing alike. But what you found in the market over time was because those marketplaces didn't differentiate. What happened, Spencer? I don't know if you paid attention to this, but you had all these different dating applications and marketplaces that opened up. You had Hinge and Bumble and Tinder and Coffee Meets Bagel, and there are all these. I'm sure there are hundreds more, right? And all of them started with the simple premise that these big guys don't serve us,
right?
Because it's a bunch of noise. We go into this platform, it's a bunch of noise. It's not relevant to me. I'm a 23-year-old woman, and I don't want to meet Sean Dehan from Truckstop.com. Like, that's not my target audience. He's got 4 kids and he's married. Like, that doesn't make sense. Why would I be meeting him, right? They're looking for people that are like them, right? Maybe they're Catholic, maybe they're Jewish, whatever it may be. And so all these marketplaces sort of spread it up. And Scott's vision is really, trucking hasn't had that moment yet. We did so much work. It took us so long to build out these networks in the full truckload market. And it was great. We got capacity. We got to scale. But to continue to serve our customers and serve them really well, we actually have to look at each of the freight specializations as special and as unique, and to serve them better. And so oversized over-dimensional is Truckstop is very big in open deck, as you may or may not know. Flatbed is one of our stronger commodity types or trailer types, and open deck is a part of that. And of course, lots of flatbed folks will also run oversized or dimensional freight. And so we started going deeper and deeper, and we launched our heavy haul load board for carriers, which enabled truckers and drivers to quickly quote freight. It was through a partnership with Wize Load actually at the time, and added permit quoting as well, which was definitive cost of a permit through a partnership with ProMiles. And it just started to make sense. Like, it just started to come together that it made a lot of sense for us to bring the heavy haul side, their Wize Load platform in for the brokerage side for the most part. We're going to work it into the carrier side over time, but this is really a brokerage product today. And this was our, we're building out the heavy haul load board side on the carrier side, and now we're going to build out the other part of the network on the brokerage side. And we're just excited to serve our customers better through this acquisition. And to the point of Wize Load provides you with, Spence, I don't know if you've done deals in the specialty market or in the oversized over-dimensional market before, but these moves that can take someone 2 days to quote out and plan. Okay. Imagine that. You get a call from a shipper and, okay, I got a piece of freight. You're like, okay, I'll get back to you in 2 days on it. And that may be okay, but guess who they're also talking to? They're talking to 5 other brokers. They're asking them what the rate's going to be. And if any of them are using Wize Load, they're going to get a quote in 5 minutes, not 2 days. Right. And so, one of our core product philosophies at Truckstop is to enable our customers and to give them the technology that the biggest and baddest brokers have. The same tools that those guys have. We want you to compete. We want to help you compete. We want to help you own your own destiny. We believe in entrepreneurship. We believe in people, standing up and pulling up their boots by the bootstrap and going out and making a life for themselves. And we want to provide those tools for them. And Wize Load sort of helps level the playing field. You don't have to be a perfect an expert in the field. You don't have to know everything and everyone in the space in order to get competitive and get thoughtful about how you're pricing and quoting your freight. And you have the same tools that the biggest brokers have today. So we're really excited about it. It really furthers our strategy and is just kind of the beginning of what should be many, many more to come, and many more continued views and continued specializations that you see at Truckstop.
I'm curious, Sean, just moments ago you mentioned how bullish you were on open deck flatbed. How much of that just macro trend influenced the most recent transaction with Wize Load?
I don't think it did a ton. I mean, I think what's really fun about working at a company that's been around for 30 years is that you have the view of 30 years behind you, right? And what's really fun about working with Scott is Scott's been there for 30 years. And so he doesn't let, a trend today influence his decisions that he's thinking about building a business for 5, 10, 50 years more, right? How does Truckstop get to 50, and what does Truckstop look like at 50? I can guarantee you that the open deck market today does not look the same in 5 years as it does today. Right. And, but we're still bullish on providing our customers with the tools they need in order to make their business successful. And Wize Load is exactly that. And we're very bullish that open deck freight isn't going to stop moving and trucking, right? It's going to continue to have complexity. In fact, it probably only increases in complexity over time as regulations tend to mount and increase. And that type of complexity and that type of chaos is where products and companies like Truckstop thrive, because we help simplify and remove the chaos and provide you with an organizational layer right over the chaos, so you can operate your business and what you do best.
One of the things that I took away from that story was, it was kind of a slow burn in terms of that coming into play. I mean, it was a long process.
Yes,
but the relationship was always intact and 100%. Valued. And so we do this presentation. 9 differentiators that separate acquisition winners and losers. Okay. And one of those just talks about how the best of the best, they always leave that door open, and they make it so easy for the target to come back specifically to them if anything changes, like with what's going on. And so I hope our audience caught that, because I got the impression as you were telling this is, this wasn't like, hey, I'm gonna go talk to Truckstop and 4 other people. I mean, they came back to you guys and y'all worked out a deal. That's what it sounded like.
That was it. That was it. 100%.
And so just a really great practice there. So I'm going to go back to your training and philosophy. So I've never met a deal maker that didn't have some very specific philosophies about deal making. So you've been doing this for a while. Throughout your LinkedIn profile, there's multiple mentions of value creation architecture. And I think that's a really important thing. So whether it's about creating value or whether it's, about principles at the deal table, what are some of the philosophies that have helped you be successful at the deal table over the last decade?
That's a great question. I think I look at any deal as like a very serpentine process. Rarely is it, I meet you and in 30 days I've bought your company, right? That almost never happens. And if it does, it probably isn't going to be exactly what you expected it to be. And so I think so many people think about the deal as the moment you're starting to negotiate the paperwork, the moment you're starting to negotiate the deal points. But I think I believed that when I was younger, right? I believed that earlier in my career, that the deal was really when both parties have agreed we're ready to buy or we're ready to sell, right? You're ready to sell, I'm ready to buy. But what I've learned over time really is the philosophy of the deal is you have to find the moment, the window in which both company A and company B, company A is ready to buy and company B is ready to sell. And sometimes you can force the window. Sometimes you can make the window happen. Sometimes the window just needs to happen or just happens organically. And what I found is that, one of my core philosophies is you have to build the relationships, right? And so you have to be out in the market. That's like number one. And I think as a younger M&A guy, I didn't appreciate that, partly because my job in the M&A life cycle was to hit the Excel spreadsheet, right? I was doing the DCF and the deal model and blah, 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 right? And I wasn't getting as much exposure to what the full life cycle of the deal really looked like. But as I've, matured and gotten older and more experienced, it's very clear to me that value is not created in that spreadsheet. That is the place where, honestly, the least amount of value in the entire process is created. Now you have to check your value and, confirm your value and everything like that through the spreadsheet, but it's certainly not the place where the value is created. The second philosophy I have, and I think is really, really important, particularly if you are a deal maker, I call it having a prepared mind. I don't know, maybe other people call it that too, or maybe other people have that term, but I tell it to my team, I tell it to people, to my executive team, and sometimes I tell them very specifically, hey, I'm trying to prepare your mind for something that I think is going to be important for Truckstop in the next 6, 12, 18 months. And sometimes I don't even say it, right? Sometimes we just have conversations. I bring them up and I start to have a conversation, not because I have a specific deal that's hot in my hand, but because I have a sense that we're going to get there at some point in time. And that if we get there and it's a hot deal and we haven't had enough conversation about this concept or this space or this theme or this priority for the company, we simply won't have a prepared mind. What happens when you don't have a prepared mind? One, you can't be the fastest mover. Speed really does matter when a deal becomes hot.
Yeah, it does.
You're not going to be the most confident, which will impact your speed. It will also probably impact how you price things and how you negotiate things and how you try to squeeze every single bit of risk out of the deal because you have less confidence. And if you don't have speed and you don't have confidence, it's very, very challenging to win in a process. In my experience, it's also very hard to win outside of a process, because if you're trying to close a deal outside of a process, you need to have speed and confidence. Because why would someone come to me with a deal and say, I don't want to work with Spencer or some other banker. I want to just go straight to you. Well, for two reasons. One, they think they can get it done quickly. And two, they're confident that you can execute, right? And if you don't have a prepared mind, you can't execute. And the last one I'd say is also something I've had to learn, because I've had all types of bosses in this profession. I've had bosses that are highly risk averse. I've had bosses that are highly risk on, always ready to take risk. I've had bosses that are very practical, just let's talk about the practicality of this. And I've had bosses that are very high level and strategic and don't get into the details. And what I've learned as I've progressed is that there's usually only 3 or 4 things that matter in a deal. And you've really got to align with your internal stakeholders on what those 3 to 4 things are. And allow for yourself the flexibility to negotiate on all the other stuff, right? Let the other stuff be negotiated, but know what your 3 or 4 things are, because what's going to happen is you're going to have to come back to the table a bunch of times as a deal maker if you don't know what those are. And you're going to think you finished the negotiation, but then, the head of HR, your CHRO or your COO or your CFO has some big issue that comes up at the last hour because you didn't align on what those key deal points are. So I think my 3-part framework really is 1, it takes time. You've got to put in the effort. The deal is not the deal time frame, right? It's not time frame from diligence to LOI to close. That's just the tip of the deal, right? The second is you have to have a prepared mind, which is very similar to the first principle. And the third is know really what matters to you, right? If you have those 3 philosophies, I think generally speaking, you can really build out successful acquisitions. And really do successful M&A, because so much M&A is not successful. So much is not successful. So fourth, I guess, would be relationship, but I think that's related to the other 2.
Well, I think those are some gold nuggets. I hope our audience is paying attention right there. I want you to expand on that in this way. Probably over the last 6 to 12 months, we've come across more freight tech companies that have desired to either merge or be acquired. But have had material things about the company in its present state that would prevent that from happening. I'm sure, based on how prolific you guys have been over the last 4 or 5 years, that this is a similar. You come across this quite regularly. So what would you say are when you come across great people, love them to death, but but for whatever reason, you can't give it serious consideration. What would be the reasons that are most common that you would have to share that bad news with somebody?
Yeah. Well, I think, Spencer, that's changed a little bit with the way software development has changed because of products like Cloud Code and Codex. And I don't, it's really not hype. Like the level of productivity and efficiency that our developers and team are getting from these tools is next level, right? And that is actually making our analysis entirely different than it has been in the past. We used to think about things like roadmap accelerations and product tuck-ins and the like of very subscale companies, but they've built out the code. They've got the code base. They've got the, integrations. They've got the hardened technology. Like, we should tuck that in. Today, that math around the value of that acceleration has entirely changed. And it becomes very, very hard to pencil a deal on simply being able to pull forward a product roadmap, right? And so I'd say that the main things I see in terms of challenges that we have in getting to a deal with freight tech targets, and I'm specifically talking about transportation and freight tech, not the broader supply chain, because of that's you really see why I specifically call that out. The first is obviously valuation is the biggest issue in general. Specifically, the issue has been that we went through a super cycle, not the right term. We went through a massive hype cycle on freight because of COVID and because of the massive amount of liquidity and low interest rates in the ZIRP era that investors had to put capital to work because they got paid to put capital to work. And there were lots of ideas in 18, 19, 20, 21 that were probably not really fundable, at least not at venture scale fundable, but raised a ton of money. What they end up doing, Spencer, is they create a preference stack. I mean, if you're maybe your listeners have heard that or not, but a preference stack is effectively the amount of capital they have raised in order for anyone outside of the investors to receive money on an exit transaction. They must sell above the preference stack. So if the preference stack is $60 million, until 61, none of the founders or employees or non-investors will see a dime, right? Generally speaking, that's just generally how it works. Pref stacks have been a huge issue for us. And I think we are finding that they will be less of an issue going forward because investors got burned in 18 to 22 period, and they're finally licking the wounds enough that they realize that they had an issue. So pref stacks are a huge issue. So that's one. The second issue is that they built software that effectively is like a GUI, like a graphic user interface and a workflow tool, but doesn't produce anything proprietary. So when I think about that, it's like AI I can basically rebuild that if I need to. Like my developers can do that in a couple months, no big deal.
Yeah.
So you've got to have some sort of network data asset that you're generating, some sort of IP moat that's like super deep. IP moats are really hard right now, but imagine you had an IP moat like Wize Load. They had an IP moat. They had a data moat too, but they had an IP moat. That is a very unique and specialized space that I couldn't just point my developers to and say, hey, go build me the best rating and quoting tool. No, I need the specialized knowledge and the IP that they put into the algorithms, the machine learning, and the technology that they built. That was important to that deal, right? And that's why that deal was able to get done. If it was just something that I could point my developers to, maybe we didn't need to do the deal. We could just do a product launch, right? Just the same. So the first is valuation. The second is typically some sort of lack of moat, in particular today's world. And sometimes moat can be customers, right? So if you have like deep install base, super deep relationships, deep integrations, things of that nature, that can certainly be helpful. Then I think the third is like they don't have alignment across their board or otherwise. Like the founder really wants to transact because they're tired, but the board is like, nah, like keep going, man. Sorry, like you need to return capital to us, the full thing. And that misalignment oftentimes can kind of trip up a deal too. I don't know. What do you see? Anything I'm missing?
No, I think those are dialed in. I definitely have seen the attitudes around established customer bases are much different, just even in the last 12 months, based on if we can replicate this technology in a matter of months. It seems, and and I wanted to get your feedback on it, seems that there's been a higher premium on the moat around the customer base and how you and the potential to cross-sell that customer base with whatever existing technologies are in place. But for me, that's kind of almost been table stakes, because like we don't have customers right now. It's very difficult to get excited about something when you can either replicate or get something 98% of the way there.
Yeah.
It's just very hard.
It's almost, I'm not gonna say it's impossible, because anything can get done and people can make decisions that they want to make, but it's almost like today you really need, in my opinion, if I'm a founder in the freight tech space, you really need to bootstrap to get your first customers. You need to get those customers. You need to have a really proven way of getting them, a really proven product that they're having success with, and then you can go raise capital, keep your capital to a absolute minimum so that you can have the lowest stack possible over time, and keep your exit options open, right? Like if I'm a founder, I don't know how this is going to go, but optionality is valuable, and keep your optionality as big as open as possible. What a lot of founders didn't understand from 18 to 2022, when investors were just giving them money and they were like, well, it's on the table, why would I not take it? Well, the answer is because it actually decreases your optionality. That's why you don't take it.
Yeah.
You don't need that money. You take that money, you burn that money.
Yeah.
And now you have less options, right? And so that's the thing I think about. So you're totally right. Without customers today, it's very, very challenging. Without some sort of network effect or data effect or customer base, which generally speaking, you need customers to build a network effect and data. It's really tough to get a deal done.
I've had a lot of folks between freight tech and we'll kind of wrap up with this, and then I'll have one more little wild card question for you there, Sean. A lot of folks that say like this is going to be the most exciting time in T&L in the last 50 years. It's like the Super Bowl of just excitement, disruption, limitless opportunities. Of course, huge risk across the board, but because of that, it's definitely an interesting time. But what does that mean for M&A activity, specifically within freight tech? What's your take? What do you expect over the next 1 to 3 years from an overall deal volume or any type of profiles that you think will, be transacted more, either be targeted more or just be a part of more transactions? What would you tell us?
Yeah, I think that we're going to find there's already a pretty hollow middle in freight technology. There's a bunch of small companies that kind of have decent sized customer bases, but have never really broken out. There are very few kind of mid-sized companies, and there are very few large companies. And I think what we're going to find is there's going to be a very small amount of micro M&A that happens. And everyone is going to kind of fight over the mid-sized M&A, which if you're a mid-sized company, that's probably a positive. So while there might be a SaaS apocalypse and people believe your technology is less valuable than it was before, if you have growth and customers that can be added into a company, then that is exciting for them. The smallest companies, they're not getting premiums, right? Just because you're small doesn't mean you get a 10x revenue premium anymore. they're just not going to get premiums right now. And so I think that a lot of people are going to be very heads down, and need to be. If you are under $5 million in revenue, you need to be really heads down and really focused on how you get to scale, because the exit options outside of that, I think, are very challenging, because almost everyone thinks that they can rebuild your product if it mattered to them, right?
It doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's true. Perception is what matters. And so, that's a good word there. All right, final, this has been awesome, Sean. It's more than I expected. Not that I'm super surprised, but let's go back to that philosophy again. I want, I'm thinking about, whatever you've been reading or whatever else. What would be a book that you'd recommend to potential sellers over the next 3 years? Things to kind of get that prepared mind about a possible exit. What is a book or a podcast that you think could be helpful to them as they kind of look for that future event?
Man, well, I will say the process of being an entrepreneur and the process of going through a sale are very challenging. And so if I had one book to recommend to you, it would be the Bible, because you got to get your head straight and head on right to manage through that process. I don't think that's the book you're looking for, though, but I'll give you that one. From a podcast perspective, I think understanding your market, understanding who you're talking to, understanding your potential partners and potential long-term homes is very important. Again, not a book, but just a recommendation. Look out there and look at the companies that could make sense. Start building relationships now. You're not trying to sell yourself. The best time to sell your business is not when you're selling your business, right? Like, you want them to want you, not the other way around. So start talking about your business. Start asking them, are there synergies between our two companies? Are there ways we can work together? Let me give you a couple that I think do those make sense to you? Are those in your strategy? Are you guys focused on this area? Will this become a focus? Probe, build a relationship, meet them, learn about them. If they've got an M&A guy, great. If they don't have an M&A guy, meet the CEO, meet the product guy, whatever. It doesn't matter. Meet whoever it is at those companies and make friendship with them. And I'd say, like, from a book perspective, man, what's a good M&A book? I don't know if there is one. The Art of the Deal. I'm kidding. I like to listen to a couple of things. I like to listen to Invest Like the Best with Patrick O'Shaughnessy. I'm not sure that really is going to help you sell your business or not, but I think you learn a lot about business and a lot about where things are going. What you're also hearing a lot from in that podcast is from investors who are rethinking the world, right? They're rethinking, how do you invest in technology? How do you invest in software? How do you invest in all these things? Those are the same types of conversations and questions I'm having to deal with myself. I'm having to talk with my board about. I'm having to talk with my CEO about, my executive team about. I'm having to help learn along the way. How should we be thinking about these things? And so I find value and listening to those. And I think if the people, your ultimate customer, right, in the case that you're the seller, your buyer, if your buyers are listening to those things, it's always good to get into their head, right? So I'd say Invest Like the Best by Patrick O'Shaughnessy. It's a good podcast.
I love it. And 100%. If you're not reading the Bible and you're trying to sell a company, I hope you're on your knees praying regularly, because you need all the help you can get. So, well, hey, listen, Sean, what a delight. I really appreciate you spending some time with us, allowing our audience to get to know you a little bit better. If they want to learn a little bit more about Truckstop.com, what's the best way to keep in tune with what you guys are working on?
Man, it's going to sound like I'm being ironic, but go to www.truckstop.com. That's a great way to get plugged in. And obviously, if you are a founder and owner of a business, you own a trucking business or a brokerage business, and you ever want to chop it up on M&A with me or strategy with me, always open on my LinkedIn. Just type in Sean Dehan. There's not a lot of Sean Dehans in the world. You'll find me, connect with me, tell me where you heard me talk, and I'd love to connect. And I love this. I love thinking about deals. I love thinking about strategy. It's what kind of makes it all worth it to me. So I'm always open. As the kids say, DMs are open.
Love it. That's going to do it for us in the hot seat, Sean. We will see you next time.